I mean, one of the things that is problematical about the internet, okay, you asked me ages ago on the show, is the internet good for conspiracy theories? And I said at the time, the internet's a library, okay? It's just full of books. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. People aren't using the books to read anymore. People are using the books to beat other people's brains in, right? And all that you're getting, YouTube is good and bad, right? What you get is rather than me go and read 10 books, why don't I go and watch one half-an-hour video? Because they've done the reading for me. Do you know what I mean? And then you can spread that. The problem with that is that you're going to an end product and you don't know if they've misrepresented it. You don't know if it's that. And so you get a lot of this where people have like, it's easier to go to a guru and to spread information that somebody else has done rather than you look it up yourself. And it's even harder to actually go into that and go, I disagree.
Yeah, whether you like it or not, the truth is really hard to actually get to, and it's going to cost you some work and some effort, and it has value when you get it.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be easily available, or doesn't appear to be easily available to everyone, because there's vested interests to hide that truth.
Absolutely,
for certain agendas.
It's a marketing campaign. If you ever like, I mean, for products, it's Clotilde Rapay. He basically said, the best marketing campaign is, I want that product. Why? Don't know. The best marketing campaign in propaganda is, I believe that. Have you got any evidence for it? No, but I kind of believe it. There was a story, basically, I won't name names or say what the actual theory was, but I was disagreeing with somebody on this one particular theory, and I say I just don't think that it holds any water. And I said on this, okay, fine, if you think that's real, fine. Can you tell me what crime was committed, by who was the victim, where did this happen, when did it happen, what's your evidence that this actually happened, and then I'll drive you to the police station. And this person turned around to me and said, oh, that's a good point, I don't know the answer to any of that. But there's no smoke without fire. It's like, dude, you're putting the cart before the horse there. Like, do you know what I mean? It's the wish follows, is the father of the thought. And that's incredibly dangerous, to be quite honest.
You've said here that stories with that have an emotional pull.
Yeah.
Just tell us about that. Tell us the importance of that.
Well, that's the thing. If you can appeal to somebody on an emotional level, not a rational one, you've got them. Most successful advertising campaigns are on an emotional level, not a rational one. Most propaganda campaigns are on an emotional level, not a rational one. Like, let's get worried about this particular group of people attacking people or whatever. We'll not look at the facts and the numbers or whatever. We'll just get the emotional response. You can't tell me that that's not bad. No, it's not bad. But well, then that's the argument. Well, can we not look at no time to look at the figures. We've just got to react to the badness. Yeah. And I can think of a dozen stories recently where
basically... talked about the HIV thing the other week.
Well,
that might be an example of one.
There's numerous things where basically, you scare people into a response. There has been certain things where people, do you know what, I don't care if it's true or not, but I'd sooner be safe than sorry, for example. So you're absolutely right with that. It's very tricky.
Okay, so J-Trig is something a bit more sinister, I would say, than what we've been talking about, and a bit far more kind of underhand and just despicable, really. Start the ball rolling with
this. Well, J-Trig was exposed by Edward Snowden, and again, I'm actually with you on this, in as much as I don't trust him that completely, and I don't trust Julian Assange, and I think that essentially what this is very much like you stated before, where this is a head on a pike type thing. Like, if we tell people about this, then, J-Trig, apparently it's only used against enemies of the state, but we'll see. Like, among the core self-identified purposes of J-Trig are two tactics. One, to inject all sorts of false material onto the internet in order to destroy the reputation of its targets, and two, to use social sciences and other techniques to manipulate online discourse and activism to generate outcomes it considers desirable. And this is a GCHQ project. Okay, to see how extremist these programs are, just consider the tactics they boast of using to achieve those ends. False flag operations, which is posting material to the internet and falsely attributing it to somebody else. Fake victim blog posts, pretending to be the victim of an individual whose reputation they want to destroy, and posting negative or contrary information on various forums. JTRIG has developed covert tools to seed the internet with false information, including the ability to manipulate the result of online polls, artificially inflate page view counts on websites, amplify sanctioned messages on YouTube, and plant false Facebook wall posts for entire countries. According to the study of a group by the UK's Defence Science and Technology Laboratory, the language of JTRIG operations is characterised by the terms discredit, distrust, dissuade, deceive, disrupt, delay, deny, denigrate, and deter. And this is the Joint Threat Research Intelligence Group, and it feeds false information into the field of the internet. It creates fake gurus. It starts AstroTurf campaigns, which is a fake grassroots charity campaign, and has sock puppet accounts, which is basically people pretending to be who they are. And a lot of these is government-paid trolls who influence chat via ridicule or other tactics. They actually use this in Argentina. They admitted to using this in Argentina to promote self-determination for the Argentinian people. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Falkland, Malvinas, whatever you want to call it. They promoted pro-British sentiment via propaganda campaigns hidden through social media to reduce the sentiment that the Falklands should go back to Argentina.
When was this then, Neil?
Well, this was very, very recently.
Oh, right, I see. Right, this is
in the past few years, they actually did that.
Yeah.
And what's really strange is that basically we've got these types of programs, and all of a sudden, quite a lot of people have sort of forgotten 9/11, have forgotten 7/7, forgotten Al Qaeda, forgotten the creation of these groups, and all of a sudden, a lot of people are genuinely concerned that ISIS is a real. Yeah, radical Islam is a real thing.
This is what I've found in debates with people who were talking about are certain recent events staged, etc., or what's really going on, that you have to wind these people back to 9/11 and remind, and then they'll say, "Oh well, I know that was set up." But these are I know 7/7, but the Muslims are coming to get us. Yeah, because this was real and these people died.
Yeah, it's not the intelligence agencies. No, the problem is radical Islam. Apparently, all of a sudden,
a lot of people genuinely believe that, Neil.
I mean, there's always a problem with any type of extremism or radicalisation. It's not to say that it's totally blameless, but we know how intelligence agencies work, and we know how false flags work, and we know how propaganda and the concept of spreading a lot of these sort of nationalist groups. Bizarrely, the rhetoric that they spit out about Islam just so happens to fall directly in line with British and American foreign policy. Mm-hmm. Bizarre, isn't it? Mm. It's almost as if it was set up to promote that. Mm-hmm. I mean, let's just have a look at some of these other JTRIG programs.
So JTRIG, it's been split down into all of these sub-projects, and they're all working in slightly different ways. Yep. Just manipulating the internet, essentially, with some very crafty techniques.
It's terrifying if you think about it, really. I mean, Underpass is a JTRIG program that changes the outcome of online polls. And we've discussed before how polls can intimate rather than report. Do you know what I mean? If
they can influence your opinion if you see a poll.
Yeah, if it's 100% of people think this, then you're less likely to go, well, actually, I'm going to go out in the street and be the one person that says no.
It's normative conformance, I think they call it.
Absolutely, yeah. Badger, which is a mass... It's a mass email swamping. So it's DDoSing basically, where you just you destroy a server by hitting them with hundreds and hundreds of thousands of documents. Right. There's Warpath, which is exactly the same thing, only with SMS, like text messages. It'll mass delivery a text to jam up a device, or alternatively, they can mass send out text or emails that promote a certain story or whatever. Silverlord disrupts videos on Vimeo, YouTube, Skype, anything like that. Miniature Hero disrupts Skype as a whole. So basically, if your Skype call's going down, it could be bad connection, it could be JTRIG.
Yeah, just want to interject on that one. Miniature Hero, it's called, disrupts Skype calls. So someone can externally eavesdrop on Skype, and if they want to kind of make it look like the line's gone. Or it's, now, I've noticed this on Radio 4, right? It's maybe something slightly different, where they're interviewing someone who is putting the opposing view, and is doing really well, and suddenly it starts to go, and then they'll say, "Oh, sorry about that, Mr. Such and Such. We seem to have lost that and you can tell it's a digital call, it's
Yeah.
probably Skype.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is true, but I just think they've got a button there.
Yeah.
They think, oh, this guy's beginning to win the argument. Right, well,
They
press
have an
that.
admitted
button.
They have an admitted button. It's called Miniature Hero. Spring Bishop finds private photographs on social media, presumably for blackmail purposes.
Yeah.
Angry Pirate can disable an online social media account or an email account, make it completely inoperable.
Right.
Gateway, that increases traffic to a specific website. Gestator
Right, which, just to interject again, Neil,
Yeah.
and now that could cause a problem. Like, I put a document on my website that was larger than I'd intended to, and encouraged people to download it. Zumph, my website went because I went straight over the bandwidth.
Yeah,
So that internet service providers or hosting companies will take your website down if you go over a bandwidth.
Oh, yeah.
So
Well,
falsely increasing the traffic is a way of getting rid of a.
Yeah.
at least-
Well, it can work in either way. It can direct people towards it because that's a favourable site, or it can, as you say, destroy the site by basically overloading it and making it fall out of its parameters. Gestator is a program that promotes a certain message or trope or story or theory. That's the one where basically they'll push false stories through the internet. Changeling, now this is a really scary one. Changeling sends emails from your account that are indeterminable. So if they wanted to discredit you, they could basically plant child porn on your computer remotely, send that via an email, and you're all of a sudden on the sex offenders register.
Right.
Like,
Okay.
and that's absolutely 100% admitted. Now, and the JTRIG is one program. JTRIG, now all of those are part of JTRIG, which is a GCHQ type operation. It was a GCHQ operation. There are lots of similar programs that exist via US intelligence.
Just to go back, Gestator promotes a certain message, trope, story, theory.
Yeah.
Flat Earth?
Could be. Could be.
Okay.
And there's a few. I mean,
Not going to go into that.
No, let's not. Let's not open that kind of worms. But like, there's a few theories, tropes, whatever, that are becoming very popular. And I'm certainly of the opinion of like, I'll put it this way, okay? Any theory where you know what's happened before you've looked at the evidence is crap. Like, and I think there's a lot of promotion of that. This is this. Prove it. Not let's find out what happened. Saying that this is what happened, okay, and then just looking for evidence to support your case. And I think a lot of that comes off the back of manipulation via this type of program.
So there's other programs other than JTRIG, just...
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, in 2008, the Pentagon ran a project called Sentient World Simulation, and the point of this was to see how groups of people would react to propaganda fed to them via the medium of social media. Studies in 2011 found numerous examples across social media where sock puppet accounts and were promoting pro-US propaganda. Now, former director of the CIA, David Petraeus, admitted to this and also admitted that there was a thing called Operation Earnest Voice, which created fake grassroots groups in order to astroturf the internet with pro-US interest groups.
Yeah, just one point about how social media as opposed to a flat internet, which is just people looking at websites. The great thing about social media that allows them to do is if they put a program out, any one of these programs, people are immediately giving their responses to that information, which they can then hone and develop their techniques because they know how effective they are. Because people, it's a two-way. It's not just someone looking at a website. All those opinions are being fed back.
It's worse than that, Richard.
Right.
We will get onto it.
Okay.
It's far, far worse than that. So, stick with it.
Yeah.
2012, the Department of Homeland Security paid the defence contractor General Dynamics to monitor anti-government sentiment on the internet. In 2014, studies by data analysis groups showed that the most common posters on Reddit, the forum, just so happened to originate from one place, Eglin Air Force Base in America. Eglin is a major hub for Pentagon domestic manipulation programs, and they funded a series of research papers examining how to establish majority views on social media platforms and how to manipulate and influence conversation and opinion and how to manipulate information.
Right.
And this just so happens to be one of the main sources of posts on Reddit.
So that's in how to establish a majority views. So not how to establish what the majority view
No,
is.
no.
How to establish they are going to make the majority view this or that.
Yeah, so the whole point of a lot of these programs is to get the audience on social media and persuade them that this is correct.
Yeah, and then
and furthermore, that they've come up with it themselves.
Right. Yeah.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
Now, it was shown at certain times in the document by the institutions that studied this. At certain times, the majority of posters on this particular site or on particular threads were from this one particular military operation. So you'd have, say, different people who are all basically based at Eglin, pretending to be different people, influencing the direction of this conversation.
And people wonder why I've closed new members to my forum now.
Wow. In 2014, it was shown that Twitter feeds and social media posts were analysed as part of a Department of Defence funded project designed to manipulate the emotions of social media users. Okay, there's a project called SMISC, Social Media and Strategic Communications, and this specifically looks how to influence and change behaviour in social media users. And this is called stochastic terrorism, right? Okay, what you're doing is essentially you're influencing. It's like a hate preacher or an imam or someone like that. You're not committing a crime. You're injecting this information into the sphere that might influence somebody to act on that, and that's called stochastic terrorism.
Right.
And this is, again, it's a very, very powerful. You could create essentially tail-chasing stories that go nowhere to distract people from real stories. Very much like in the Manson case, but now we've got it in the space age, so to speak. In 2014, it was shown that the Pentagon has a counter reset button that can kill any viral story dead. You can just
right. So
memory hold
this
stuff.
might be a story that's true and it's damaging to a government, let's say, right? And so they can slow down or halt that. You see, this is why I keep an email database for people who watch this program. I encourage people to give me their email address.
Yeah.
And I have software which sends out to every person.
Yeah.
And really, unless you've got some real direct measure, you can't really get in the way of that. You can't stop those people getting those emails, right? That's why I don't use social media to promote, for example, Twitter or Facebook.
Well, I mean, Project Minaret. Project Minaret's an NSA program to intercept and alter emails and texts.
Yeah, okay, but you would know that had been done.
No, you wouldn't,
because they don't know. You could have half a dozen emails on your email list.
Yeah.
That person reports back to you on.
Oh, so, right. Well, if you're expecting a response, but there's nothing to say that they can't create that response themselves.
Yeah, but I would say it's certainly less fallible just using clunky old email, sending it out to so many thousand people, than putting it on Facebook and expecting everyone to see it.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Because they can just make sure less people see it than your 5,000 followers or whatever.
Yes, that's certainly a tactic that they could use, yeah.
So, and I think that Facebook, YouTube, etc., are a bit like cattle pens, and they've herded people in there that can be far better controlled and monitored and manipulated within those websites than within alternative websites.
Stimulus response thing, okay, if you know that basically your opinion is X, Y, and Z, then you know that basically your response to a certain social situation is going, you're an avowed racist, right? Okay, you're not going to like it if your boss is black. Or something, that's really glib and silly, but the point is that basically if you understand how people think about things, you can understand how people would react to things. Yeah. And people are far, far easier to control if they're in a nice little penned off ideological area where we know you believe this, we know you believe this, and we know you believe this. And when people start to conform to groups, they tend to believe this and this and this, because if you don't believe that, you get kicked out of the group. Do you know what I mean? You don't want to be the one nail that stands out because they catch the hammer.
Yeah.
Right? And as I said earlier, this is basically, people are becoming incredibly reactionary on the internet, very extreme in their views, no grey areas, sort of, and setting people up against one another. Could that be internet propaganda? Could that be, psyops that are directing people's opinions and changing behaviour? And I think it absolutely is.
Right. I've disabled my YouTube comments. That's because I use YouTube as a video host. That's what YouTube is being used. I used to use a different video host, but they went out of business. So I was forced to use YouTube, right? But I'm using YouTube as a video host. I'm not using it for a discussion. No, because people can go and discuss that on the thousands of other websites on the internet if they want to discuss my material, right? If you don't have someone who can police a forum, because that's what it becomes a forum, you get half a dozen people who are there purely to disrupt it. The comments then discredit the video unfairly if you haven't got time to actually manage it. And that's why the comments are disabled. No other reason. YouTube is being used as a video host. I'm not stopping discussion for anyone who wants to discuss wherever they want to, but don't write graffiti on my garden wall. That's
absolutely. I get that, because, like, you know, it's a position that I'm sure you don't want to be in, but your hand has been forced, because essentially all you're going to get is trolling. Or
government trolling.
Or sycophancy. And frankly, neither of them are really very helpful, are they? And so, it's a bit of a knotty area, really.
If you're going to have a forum on the internet discussion, right, you have to have an arbiter, and that's a full-time job, right? I'm making these programs, I'm doing research. I haven't got time to sort out petty arguments over nitty.
Nor is it your responsibility.
Exactly. So you know, that's the reason, folks. No other reason. But as I say, I'm quite happy for people to discuss all the videos on their own web space.
Right.
So you want to come back to the Trump campaign slogan?
Yeah, I mean, I just think, again, it was make America great again. Regardless of what you think about it, it is genius in as much as it's a masterclass in weasel words. It's an incredibly clever marketing phrase, because it means nothing and everything. Let's just start with America. What do you mean by America? Do you mean the American elite? Do you mean everybody? Does that include illegal immigrants? Does it mean America the corporation? Does it mean America the army? Does it mean America the idea? Does it mean America the GDP? What does that mean? It doesn't really mean anything, okay? So we're going to take this and we're going to make it. What does making involve? Does that, you know, you make a house, you can make a cake, you can make a bed. Is it going to involve a lot of work? Who's going to do it? How will it be done? Will it be easy? Great. What does great actually mean? What does it look like? For who? Great militarily? Great economically? Great intellectually? Will it create things? Will it discover things? Will it be beneficial to itself or other? What does great mean? And again, well, that's genius, because that's a lovely appeal to nostalgia there. It was incredibly clever. It's talking about this past, this indeterminable rose-tinted spectacles that never really existed. So when was America great? Was it great in the 50s? When, you know, there was no civil rights? Was it great in the 80s when you were committing genocide against South America? When was it great? And was it universally great? I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people in the 80s that weren't as happy as a lot of other people in the 80s in America.
Just before Kennedy got assassinated.
Yeah, that was it. It was perfect then, apparently. Unless, of course, you know, you were a minority, or, you know, or it's any of the other things. But it's meaningless. Basically, the point is that you apply your own meaning to it, and two different people will get two completely different meanings. So in that sense, it has to be respected as being a very, very clever tactic. Now,
and you think Trump has got genealogy links to the global elite, do you?
Oh, totally. He's 19th cousins to the Clintons. Like, he's got an ancestry full of British royalty and aristocracy. Like, he's not a man of the people. I know he sold that I'm a man of the people, blah, blah, blah. He's connected to the mafia via his business dealings. He's got an incredibly dodgy tax reputation. He's got an incredibly dodgy record on not paying working people, small contractors, and basically saying, sue me. Oh, can't afford to sue me? Well, tough, you don't get paid.
Yeah, that's the Duncan Bannatyne business model, apparently.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you don't get to be that wealthy by being nice, do you? Like, He's got an incredibly dodgy record on suing people who says things he doesn't like. He's a bad businessman, right? Okay, that's just a fact. He continuously lost money for investors. He was bailed out of bankruptcy by a Saudi prince, which completely goes against his rhetoric. He's pro-big oil. He's advocated censorship of the media. He's advocated censorship of the internet. His foundation has continuously been accused of corruption, theft, money laundering. He's pro-civilian death in conflict. He's pro-military. He's pro-torture. He borrowed $160 million from George Soros, right, okay? That name is usually enough for people who are on that particular affiliation to go, ah, George Soros. They were co-defendants on the same lawsuit, him and they're friends. They certainly were business partners. Like, he's got an ally in Rupert Murdoch. Rupert Murdoch was sticking up for Trump recently. If alarm bells aren't going off, then for Christ's sake, like, he made overtures to 9/11 Truth, basically, because he was courting that InfoWars crowd and stuff like that. And then basically makes kissy faces at Rudy Giuliani and decides that we're going to send 20,000 troops into Afghanistan because that's the cause of 9/11. Well, he's either lying or he was lying before. So, you know, you just don't trust him.
I received emails, I think, I'm not sure if it was just before or just after Trump was elected, essentially begging me to support Trump because he was wanting to investigate 9/11.
Could that be because Robert Mercer set up an entire node of alternative media telling you that that was the case?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was. Also, he's got incredibly close links to Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah.
Like, you know Virginia Roberts, the 15-year-old masseuse that was hired by Jeffrey Epstein and used as a prostitute for his friends and was photographed with Prince Andrew, you know, after being courted by Ghislaine Maxwell. Right. Which I believe we talked about before. They met at Trump's Mar-a-Lago golf course where she was working as a coat attendant. He's been friends with Ghislaine Maxwell since the late 1990s. In 2002, Donald Trump said this about Jeffrey Epstein in New York Magazine. "I've known Jeffrey for 15 years, terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. It's even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side." This is a convicted paedophile. "No doubt about it, Jeffrey enjoys his social life."
Sorry, Jeffrey Epstein is a convicted paedophile.
Yeah, Jeffrey Epstein is a convicted paedophile.
Yeah, certainly with Trump's business dealings and his tax affairs, there's enough there if people wanted to, or if the right people wanted to get rid of him tomorrow. Yeah. Not to mention possible other stuff that you've just mentioned.
Yeah, well, I mean, he said he was subpoenaed during Jeffrey Epstein's 2009 child sex case. Right. And Trump basically negotiated with lawyers to give a private deposition to avoid court. Now, this was off the back of the fact that basically it was shown that Trump was making calls from his private home line to the Palm Beach and Malibu properties of Jeffrey Epstein, where dignitaries were filmed with underage children, and that he visited. I mean, I know a lot of people make a lot of thing about Bill Clinton being on the Lolita Express, and I'm absolutely sure that is an accurate portrayal. But Trump was going to the same places with the same people at the same time doing the same things.
All right.
So,
do you think that's currently being used to blackmail him to now, or it's something that
I don't know. All I'm saying,
in other words, is it just these money people who are behind him, or are there more CIA or what?
I don't know, but all I'm saying is that's indicative that he's not the man of the people, for the people that he's portrayed, that he's actually far closer. I think a lot of these rivalries are actually, you know, nonsensical. As I said before, he still talks to the New York Times. He still sent Anthony Scaramucci to go and speak to CNN, despite proclaiming them fake news and stuff like that. The CIA is a vested interest in the media, as we know. Like, I just think they're all mates.
I do like it when he points at the BBC journalist at the press conference and just says, "You're fake news," and he goes to someone else. Well, I do like that.
Well, yeah, it's a very entertaining tactic. And you could see, you know, he's quite a charismatic person. He's a TV star. He's Ronald Reagan plus, isn't he? He's Ronald Reagan that can actually sometimes string a sentence together. Doesn't always make sense, but all the words are there. Like, and yeah, this is. But I would say I'm of the opinion that basically he's just an arrogant person, and that these other people are using him as a tool. I don't think he's a nice person. I think he's a despicable person, and I don't think that he's an honest person or a good person or anything that you would go, yeah, I'm going to give you a tick in this box. But I think that it's actually the people behind him that are the sort of the driving influence.
Now, what you're saying is he's a twat.
Yeah, he's a twat.
Right,
yeah, we'll go with that.
All right, so we'll come on to Australia now.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is just kind of to sort of like to sort of preface what I've been talking. Well, to sort of add to what I've been talking about, preface what we're going to go on about. All of this is going to tie together and make sense at the end. So there'll be some people who are sat there seething because we're having a go at Trump and stuff like that. But just stick with it. Right, do we think that Western governments would overthrow other governments? Well, yes, pretty much. Iran, Venezuela, Chile.
Well, we've tried it in Turkey recently.
Well, we're doing it in the Ukraine at the minute. We set up. I mean, this has actually been admitted now that we set up a right-wing coup in the Ukraine to basically, it's to do with gas pipelines, right? This is what the Russia thing is to do with. Like Russia's trying to get a gas pipeline through Ukraine. It's also it's been trying to undermine the EU since it murdered the Polish government, right? Okay, because economically, NATO versus Russia is a very, very strong power. If you could break that up and break up the EU and stuff like that, Russia is going to become more dominant in the power industry. It's dead straightforward. The Cold War never ended. It's just moved into economic terms, essentially. That's what it is. But so would we overthrow a government? Yeah, I think we would. In fact, I know we would, because in the 70s, we attempted we performed a coup in Australia. After Edward Gough Whitlam was elected as Prime Minister in 1972, CIA, MI6 and Australia's own intelligence agencies conspired to basically they made it look like there was financial improprieties on the part of this particular Prime Minister, and 4 years into his term they made him actually resign. Now, this is because basically the elected Labour government had threatened to close Pine Gap, which is a missile testing base. They'd also raised wages, increased public services, and they were due to remove God Save the Queen as national anthem. They proposed a withdrawal from Vietnam, and they started to recognise the state of Palestine. And it would appear that basically the CIA, MI6 and the establishment of Australia decided that this wasn't really happening, and so they forged documents to imply, financial improprieties and basically oust this government to the detriment of the Australian people for military psychological purposes. What's really terrifying is that basically, apparently, similar tactics were used in the UK against Harold Wilson's Labour government. Apparently, the British press smeared Wilson as a potential Soviet spy, or at the very least a huge security risk. Now, what's really, again, terrifying is that in 1974 there was a proposed coup d'etat against the Wilson government by MI5, and this was led by Lord Mountbatten. They commandeered Heathrow Airport for a practice run of overthrowing the elected government. And I'll just point out, this is probably a coincidence, but just after Wilson was ousted and Pine Gap was continued, then we got Thatcher and Reagan, who brought about this free trade association, this sort of special relationship, and then we've got all sorts of delightful things like Iran-Contra, the crack epidemic, AIDS, etc., that just happen to serve this particular ideology.
Right.
Now, is this sort of thing going off in America? Is this what's gone off with, say, the Trump campaign? Are these wealthy right-wing people trying to influence a type of coup by creating an alternative media and then trying to influence it? I think it's incredibly possible. I mean, let's just look at Steve Bannon, who's just basically resigned as the aide to the president. Essentially, he's not going to be. I thought that was a quite clever PR tactic, really, because essentially.
So the reason why you're drawing this parallel, Neil, is because you're saying that Trump getting into power, it was almost like a coup. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and I will expand on this
Right.
later,
All
but
right.
like
Yeah.
to
Okay.
it's to do with a firm called Cambridge Analytica, and we will come on to that shortly.